Their films are still replayed, their lines still make audiences smile, and their characters remain as vivid as the day they first appeared. Yet behind those unchanging images, the real artists have navigated age, health, and many private choices. This video will bring you closer to the lesser-mentioned chapters in the lives of famous Hollywood actors. How many people on this list do you recognize? Please comment, like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to explore together. During Hollywood's golden age, Yvonne De Carlo was one of the most prominent faces of Technicolor films. Her elegant beauty, confident demeanor, and captivating screen presence often led her to be cast in large-scale productions. Later, Yvonne continued to be loved by a generation of television viewers as the elegant mother of a unique family, a role that brought a new dimension to her decades-long career. Unlike the stories often told about stars abruptly disappearing from the public eye, Yvonne maintained her independence and continued working well into her later years. However, after a health setback in 1998, her mobility and ability to care for herself were significantly affected. To find a more stable, supportive environment, she moved to the motion picture and television country house and hospital in Woodland Hills, California, a facility dedicated to caring for those who worked in the entertainment industry. Yvonne lived there for nearly a decade. Life in front of the camera was replaced by quiet days with the regular support of medical staff and caregivers. She limited her public appearances, spending the remainder of her life in a community with many elderly colleagues from the same industry. Yvonne De Carlo passed away in early 2007 at the age of 84. Her final years did not diminish the image she projected on screen. Instead, they remind us that behind every cinematic icon is a normal human being who also needs care, privacy, and attention as they age. When Art Carney appeared on television, he almost instantly changed the atmosphere of every scene. With his controlled expressions, flexible gestures, and natural ability to generate laughter, he became one of the most beloved comedic artists of early American television. The character Ed Norton brought Art's name into millions of homes, but his talent was not limited to comedic roles. Years later, Art Carney proved his diverse acting range by taking on deeper roles and winning prestigious film awards. That success showed that behind his accessible comedic style was a serious artist capable of shifting fluidly between laughter and everyday emotions. As he reached his 80s, Art did not seek to maintain his presence at all costs. He chose to withdraw from the spotlight and move to a nursing and rehabilitation center in Chester, Connecticut. This was a small, quiet town, far from major entertainment hubs like Los Angeles or New York. That decision reflected how Art Carney wanted to live in the final stage of his life, simple, private, and away from media attention. The artist who once filled studios with laughter spent his final years in a structured environment, receiving necessary support from caregivers and close relatives. He passed away in Connecticut in late 2003 at the age of 85. Art Carney left public life gently, but the characters and laughter he left behind continue to be remembered by many generations of audiences. Norma Shearer was more than just an MGM star in the 1930s. She occupied a position that few actresses of that time could achieve, having priority in script selection, working with top-tier crews, and possessing significant influence over her own on-screen image. Her marriage to powerful producer Irving Thalberg also brought Norma to the center of Hollywood's golden era. However, her success was not solely due to her standing within the studio. Norma was known for her confident demeanor, her ability to portray modern female characters, and her proactivity in building her career path. In an industry that strictly controlled the images of actors, she managed to maintain her voice longer than most of her contemporaries. After voluntarily leaving cinema, Norma lived discreetly for many years. As she aged, her memory and cognitive abilities began to decline, making independent living increasingly difficult. Her family eventually chose an environment that could provide constant supervision and support at the motion picture and television country house in Woodland Hills. In her final years, Norma lived among a community of people who had also worked in the film industry. At times, memories of the MGM era seemed to remain very present in her conversations and interactions with those around her. This should not be seen as a bitter contrast, but as the traces of a career that held a special place in her life. Norma Shearer passed away in 1983. Although her final years were spent away from the camera, her legacy belongs to a significant period in Hollywood history, when actresses gradually gained more agency over their roles and images. In your opinion, what made Norma Shearer one of the most memorable actresses of Golden Age Hollywood? Talent, courage, or the ability to define her own career? Please share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to continue following us in these authentic and humane stories about cinematic icons. Conrad Bain became a familiar image of calm and stability on American television. In the role of Philip Drummond, he portrayed a wealthy but approachable father who always resolved family troubles with composure and tolerance. For many viewers, that character represented the sense of security that family shows often provide. Outside of acting, Conrad had a very practical view of the profession. He was trained in theater and saw television fame as a part of the job, not the sole identity of his life. When the show ended, he did not try to prolong the attention with loud appearances or projects aimed only at maintaining his name. When he reached his 80s and needed more support with daily activities, Conrad moved to an assisted living facility in California. This decision happened quietly, without scandal or major financial incident. What mattered to him at that time was having a stable environment and being closer to his family. He spent his final years there before passing away in 2013 at the age of 89. Conrad Bain's story is not a journey from peak to collapse. It is the image of an artist who knew how to separate himself from his role, accepting old age with serenity and choosing a private life after decades in the public eye. In 1940, Hattie McDaniel set a special milestone when she won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress for her role in Gone with the Wind. That achievement made her a significant figure in American film history and opened a door that previously almost never existed for black artists in Hollywood. However, a prestigious award could not erase the social limitations of the era. In the following years, Hattie still had to work within a system that did not grant her the same equal status as many of her colleagues. When her health declined in the early 1950s, she required regular medical care and moved to a facility for former film industry workers in Woodland Hills. There, Hattie finalized her last wishes. She hoped to be laid to rest at Hollywood Memorial Park alongside the big names of the industry she helped shape. But that request was denied because of the racial segregation policies that still existed at the cemetery at the time. She passed away in 1952 and was buried at Angeles Rosedale Cemetery. Decades later, Hollywood Memorial Park finally erected a monument to honor her. Hattie McDaniel's final years thus tell a story beyond health or age. They also reflect the gap between recognition on stage and equality in real life, while highlighting the steadfastness of a woman who left an indelible mark on Hollywood history. For many years on The Carol Burnett Show, Tim Conway was loved for his ability to turn simple situations into unpredictable comedic moments. He often made his co-stars unable to maintain a straight face, not through over-the-top performances, but through precise timing, a calm expression, and his own unique way of creating surprises. But Tim's final years took a completely different pace. As he passed age 80, he faced serious issues related to cognitive decline. His ability to manage work travel and make health decisions became increasingly limited. Because he required constant support, Tim moved to a nursing and rehabilitation facility in the Los Angeles area. During his care, a legal dispute arose between his wife and daughter over the right to decide his residents' treatment methods and the management of his daily needs. Eventually, the court had to appoint a guardian to ensure health-related decisions were carried out clearly. Tim Conway passed away in May 2019. His circumstances at the end of his life show that fame and public love do not always help a family avoid disagreements when making care decisions for a loved one. However, those disputes should not be the only thing that defines him. Tim's legacy remains in the decades of laughter he brought to audiences through a refined, natural comedic style that is hard to replicate. Jean Arthur possessed one of the most recognizable voices in American cinema. In films such as Mr. Smith Goes to Washington and The More the Merrier, she often played intelligent, practical women, confident enough to stand as equals to any male character on screen. It was the combination of humor sharpness and approachability that made her one of the most prominent actresses of the 1930s and 1940s. What was unique was that Jean was not at all comfortable with fame. She faced much pressure when appearing before crowds, disliked promotional activities, and often avoided interviews, premieres, or places with too many photographers. Contrary to her confident screen image, she always wanted to keep a clear distance between her work and personal life. When she left cinema, Jean chose to live discreetly in Carmel, California. She spent many years protecting her privacy, caring for pets, and refusing most invitations to return to the screen. In her later years, as her physical health declined and living alone became difficult, she moved to a local care facility instead of returning to Los Angeles. Jean Arthur passed away in 1991 at the age of 90. She ended her life exactly as she had always wanted, away from the noise, without the need for final appearances, and without letting Hollywood decide how she would leave. For Jean, privacy was not an escape, but the right to choose after years of living in an industry that always demands one appear before the public. If you were to choose one film to rediscover Jean Arthur's talent, which work would you start with? Please leave your choice in the comments for everyone to discuss. Like if you appreciate authentic stories about old Hollywood, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next character in our journey of discovering the years behind the glory. Before the Tarzan yell became one of the familiar sounds of classic cinema, Johnny Weissmuller was already known worldwide in the swimming pool. With 5 Olympic gold medals, he once represented speed, strength, and rare body control. It was that athletic foundation that helped Johnny create a convincing Tarzan, turning him into an icon of adventure films for many years. On screen, Johnny could swim across dangerous rivers, swing between trees, and overcome every challenge with almost unlimited strength. But as he entered his 70s, his health began to change. A series of issues related to circulation and mobility made independent living increasingly difficult. Johnny later moved to a care facility in Acapulco, Mexico, where he had many memories from the peak of his career. No longer in large studios or elaborate action scenes, his life gradually shifted to a slow and steady pace, with the regular support of a care team. He passed away in Acapulco in early 1984. Although his final years were far from the adventurous image that made his name, it did not diminish the value of Johnny Weissmuller's legacy. He is still remembered as an outstanding athlete and one of the most influential actors to portray Tarzan on screen. A pink bubble appears, light radiates, and Billy Burke steps out with a gentle smile as Glinda in The Wizard of Oz. That image alone was enough to make her a permanent part of the cinematic memory of many generations. However, before this famous role, Billie had a long career on Broadway and once lived in great prosperity. Her marriage to stage producer Florence Ziegfeld brought her to the center of New York's artistic life. The family once owned a large estate and enjoyed amenities reserved for the upper class. But the Great Depression and the debts left after her husband's death significantly changed Billie's financial circumstances. Instead of leaving acting, she returned to work. Billie moved to California, regularly taking roles in films and continuing to maintain her career over many decades. The role of Glinda was not only an artistic mark, but also showed the adaptability of an actress who many times had to adjust her life before unpredictable changes. When old age caused her health to decline, Billie moved to a care facility in the Los Angeles area. Her final residence was much simpler than the estates of her youth, but that story should not be seen as a failure. It was the final leg in the journey of an artist who continued to work, stood on her own, and rebuilt her life after major upheavals. Billie Burke passed away in 1970, leaving the image of a kind fairy who continues to appear on screen whenever The Wizard of Oz is shown. DeForest Kelley didn't need a big action scene to become an unforgettable character in Star Trek. With just a sharp voice, a stern face, and high-energy debates, he turned Dr. Leonard McCoy into an indispensable part of the Starship Enterprise. That character helped DeForest be recognized by many generations of viewers, even long after the original series had ended. However, DeForest was quite discreet in real life. When his health began to decline in the late 1990s and he was diagnosed with stomach cancer, the actor did not widely share his treatment process with the public. He and his longtime wife Carolyn sought out the Motion Picture and Television Country House and Hospital in Woodland Hills, California. This facility was built to support those who worked in film and television when they needed medical care or long-term support. While Star Trek events still attracted large crowds of fans, DeForest chose to live quietly and keep a distance from media attention. He passed away at this facility in 1999 at the age of 79. DeForest Kelley's final months did not take place before a camera, but that privacy was consistent with how he always protected the boundary between the actor and the famous character. Audiences may remember him as the straightforward Dr. McCoy on the Enterprise, while the human behind the role was entitled to undergo the final stage of life quietly and with dignity. In 1964, Walt Disney personally visited the Motion Picture Country House to invite an 84-year-old actress back to the studio. That woman was Jane Darwell, and the proposed role appeared in only a short segment of Mary Poppins. She played the Bird Woman, creating a gentle but emotionally resonant moment, and then returned to the care facility after completing the scene. It was a special final chapter for someone who had won an Oscar for her role as Ma Jode in The Grapes of Wrath. Over decades, Jane was often chosen by Hollywood to portray strong mothers, simple women, capable of keeping a family standing through hardship. The sincerity in her acting helped her turn supporting roles into enduring characters. In the early 1960s, Jane's health and mobility declined, requiring a more constant care environment. She moved to the Motion Picture and Television Country House in Woodland Hills, where many other elderly artists lived. Accepting the role in Mary Poppins was not an effort to return to fame, but rather like a final salute to the profession she had pursued for almost her entire life. Jane Darwell passed away there in 1967. The image of the Bird Woman became one of the most remembered moments of her late career, proving that sometimes a very short role can leave a lasting emotional impression. Do Do you remember Jane Darwell most for the powerful Ma Jode or the warm bird woman in Mary Poppins? Please share your feelings in the comments. If these stories behind classic Hollywood have given you a new perspective, please like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next journeys. W.C. Fields built his reputation with an unmistakable persona, a raspy voice, a deliberate grouchiness, and a cynical worldview. On screen, he often embodied reckless men, always ready to react to social rules with a sharp quip. That distinct style helped Fields become one of the most prominent comedic artists in American cinema during the 1930s and 1940s. However, behind the vibrant performances was a steadily declining state of health. By the mid-1940s, long-standing issues related to his lifestyle and age meant he no longer had the stamina to maintain a film schedule as before. When self-care became difficult, Fields moved to a sanitarium in Pasadena, California. His living space was now much smaller and quieter than the stages, studios, and theaters that had defined his career. Instead of spending his days among directors and colleagues, he primarily rested, read books, and received support from medical staff. This was not an ending staged in Fields' comedic style, but simply the stage where an elderly artist needed regular care. He passed away at this facility on Christmas Day in 1946. Although his final years were spent away from the spotlight, W.C. Fields left behind a comedic style with lasting influence, where satire, timing, and personality were used to turn the mundane into laughter. Many generations of viewers remember Dawn Wells for her checkered dress and the friendly smile of Mary Ann on Gilligan's Island. That character represented optimism, resourcefulness, and the approachable feel of a girl next door. The fact that the series continued to be replayed for decades meant Dawn's image was always present in American television culture. Yet, the long-term popularity of a show did not mean the actress would continue to receive proportional income. Television contracts in the 1960s often did not provide actors with significant residuals from decades of reruns. Therefore, even though Mary Ann became a familiar character, Dawn's financial stability was not guaranteed by that success. By 2018, following a fall and increasing medical expenses and financial obligations, she needed support from the community. A friend set up a fundraising campaign to help Dawn pay necessary bills and move to a safe senior care facility in Los Angeles. The fan response showed that affection for her remained very high. People who had watched Gilligan's Island as children came together to support the actress when she needed practical help most. Dawn lived at the care facility for about 2 years before passing away at the end of 2020. Her story opens an important perspective on classic television. A role can live forever in public memory, but the artist behind it still faces financial health and age issues like anyone else. In your opinion, why can stars once loved by millions still fall into such difficult circumstances? Please leave a comment, like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to continue exploring the lesser-known stories behind the Hollywood glow. Lucille Ball's audience could hardly forget the times Gale Gordon appeared with a tense face, a booming voice, and perfectly timed impatience. In the role of Mr. Mooney and many similar characters, he became an expert in comedic outbursts. The more stern he appeared on screen, the more he made the audience laugh. In real life, Gale Gordon was described as a much calmer person than his famous roles. His final years were defined not by loud arguments, but by his responsibility toward Virginia, the wife who had accompanied him for nearly 6 decades. When Virginia required constant care due to memory loss, and Gale's health was also not what it used to be, continuing to manage life independently became difficult for both. They moved together to Redwood Terrace, a senior care community in Southern California. There, Gale could receive necessary support while still living near his longtime partner. His lifestyle no longer revolved around filming schedules, audience laughter, or scripted arguments. Instead, there were structured days supported by nurses and caregivers. Gale Gordon passed away at Redwood Terrace in the summer of 1995. Behind the image of the man frequently shouting on television was a patient husband who chose to spend the final stretch of his life beside his wife. It is that natural contrast that helps the audience see another more simple and profound side of the artist. In 1971, Mary Astor made a choice few expected from an actress who once stood at the center of Hollywood. She proactively withdrew from public life and moved to the motion picture and television country house in Woodland Hills. At that time, she was not yet forced to seek full-time medical care. For Mary, this place was primarily a space to live privately after decades of being observed by the press. Mary's career had gone through very different stages. In the 1930s, her private life became a subject of media scrutiny when contents from her private diary appeared in a domestic dispute. Despite facing great pressure, she continued acting, winning an Oscar and making a mark alongside Humphrey Bogart in The Maltese Falcon. But after years of living in an industry that always demanded presence, Mary gradually no longer wanted to maintain a relationship with the limelight. At the community in Woodland Hills, she spent her time writing novels and memoirs and refused most interview requests. That was her way of reclaiming control over a private life that fame had made difficult to protect. As her health declined with age, Mary moved from her private cottage on the grounds to an area with more regular care services. She lived in this community for about 16 years before passing away in 1987. Mary Astor did not leave Hollywood in a sudden incident. She closed her public chapter with a deliberate decision, choosing silence, writing, and privacy. After a life where others once publicized her most personal matters, perhaps the final legacy she created for herself was the right to decide what was kept behind closed doors. Should an artistic life be judged by its final years or by the total value created by the artist? Today's stories show that where a star lives in old age cannot determine the meaning of the entire journey. The talent, the resilience, and the memories they leave behind are what continue to exist. Let us know your views in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to discover more lesser-known Hollywood stories.